Hello there, and welcome to SkyGems Academy podcast. At SkyGems Academy, our vision is to build a community of new generation leaders with strong core values, high level of self-awareness, high self-worth, and passionate individuals who will give back to the community and the environment. We are focused on delivering high-quality blended online learning of 21st century life skills delivered and taught online, practiced and perfected offline. Our philosophy is to inspire, educate, and nurture. We work towards inspiring and igniting sparks. We listen, we coach, we fine-tune and accelerate the mastery of 21st century life skills for various age groups. Our blended learning programs are curated from the early years to above 60 years old, as we believe in providing high-quality, lifelong learning for everyone. SkyGems Academy Podcast Series 1: How COVID-19 Transformed the Education Industry. We will take you inside the minds and behind the scenes of 40 exclusive leaders and educators in the education industry. We've interviewed 40 exclusive educators and leaders in the education industry worldwide, starting with China, where the pandemic initially started. You will hear from the leaders in the education industry sharing candidly their views on the possible changes that will take place in the education industry post-COVID-19. Be sure to tune in to SkyGems Academy Podcast Series 1 to listen and learn from the amazing stories, experiences shared, challenges faced, and techniques used by educators in different cities and countries to adapt and overcome their challenges personally as well as professionally in their respective roles in the education industry during the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, let's dive into SkyGems Academy Podcast Series 1. Introducing to you our host, Alyssa.
Hey guys, it's Alyssa. Hope everyone is keeping well. SkyGems Academy Podcast is a passion project that my team and I kicked off in early 2020. As we are all facing the unprecedented events and experiences impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, we find that there is an urgent need to unite the global community of educators and leaders to progress forward together. Our main objective is to create a platform for all global leaders and global communities to come together to document these historic moments for our future generations. SkyGems Academy Podcast is a platform for everyone from all around the world to share, listen, learn, communicate, collaborate, and come together to network and help one another to pull through this very challenging period that has impacted the global community. In each episode of SkyGems Academy Podcast Series 1, How COVID-19 Transformed the Education Industry, you will find yourself immersed and engaged in in-depth discussions and thought leadership in various aspects of education, technology, humanity, diversity, disparity, and collaborations in the education space. Our distinguished speakers also shared interesting stories, techniques, information and experiences with regards to COVID-19 pandemic and its impact to each speaker and to the education industry. We trust that you will find great value, insights and learnings from our 40 exclusive speakers in each episode of SkyGems Academy Podcast Series 1. We are very grateful and sincerely appreciate each and every one of you who has motivated us, encouraged us, contributed in your own very special ways, especially our 40 exclusive guest speakers from all around the world. A big thank you to all and a big shout out to all of you. Now, I am very pleased to introduce you to our charismatic and distinguished guest speaker for SkyGems Academy Podcast Series 1, Episode 1, Iain Riley. Here are some key highlights of Iain's sterling track records. Iain has been a leader in the education industry for more than 15 years. Iain is currently the Western Principal of Shanghai Liaoyuan Bilingual School and the IB Director of Yushan Education Group. Iain is originally from Scotland and he is passionate about education as he believes that education is one of the most rewarding jobs in the world. Iain has worked at the various schools in Scotland, Turkey, and Egypt. Iain is now based in Shanghai, China, and has been in Shanghai since 2010. Iain is an enthusiastic PYP educator and administrator who loves working on the international circuit. Iain enjoys extending learning and taking part in student welfare and musical activities. He enjoys being a risk taker and trying new things in the classroom, believe me. Iain is musically talented. Iain was a founding member of the National Youth Choir of Scotland and the Chamber Choir. Watch this space, guys. Iain sang at the 1997 Heads of the Commonwealth event in Edinburgh, attended by the Queen and the late Nelson Mandela. Impressive, isn't it? I quote and unquote Iain Riley. From now on, we are going to actually find more online learning, more technology being used in education. All teachers around the world had been upskilled to use technology that they have never used before. And this is a fantastic thing. Well, guys, tune in to Iain's podcast, exclusively streamed on SkyGems Academy podcast. Listen to Iain speaks passionately about his passions in life, impact of COVID-19 in the education industry, and his key messages to our listeners and future generations. Without further ado, let's tune in to SkyGems Academy Podcast Episode 1 for Iain Riley's podcast. Let's go! Good morning, Iain. Thank you for joining us today at SkyGems Podcast. Really great pleasure to have you with us today. And I'd like to pass on to Iain Riley for him to introduce himself. Over to you, Iain.
Hi, everybody. My name is Iain Riley. I'm the Western Principal of Shanghai Liaoyuan Bilingual School and the Director of IB for Yushan Education Group. So I oversee 2 campuses and 5 kindergartens at the moment.
Great pleasure having you with us, Iain. Thank you for your time. We'd like to go through some of the challenges that we are facing right now in a very unprecedented times. I think it's great to hear from you and also sharing from you from your lessons learned and your experiences so far. So we thought this is a great way to actually help each other and the community out there to learn how to embrace change. So I think first of all, Iain, we'd like to know, how do you feel about the current COVID-19 pandemic situation?
It's been very, very challenging globally. I arrived back in Shanghai early, back in February, from my home country of Scotland in the UK. I came back to look after the school because, of course, at that time, the epidemic, as it was then, was only in China. Now, sadly, it's gone global. And sadly, looking at the numbers within the UK, within America, the numbers are a lot larger than what we've seen before in China or indeed Asia. Now, of course, we're getting into a very difficult time with the coronavirus, with, countries being very scared about the second wave. We've had more cases in China again. We hope that doesn't expand into more, but also in South Korea as well. So it's been a very, very challenging time for all. I think that different governments have dealt with it in different ways, and some governments have been more successful than other governments. But however, we know that this is still going to carry on for quite a long time. We know that, sadly, economies are going to be affected, airlines are going to collapse, small businesses are going to collapse. But it's been wonderful, however, on a positive note, to see many of the world's education companies come together to offer support to schools, to children, to parents, to actually make sure that the children can still succeed. Also, companies that are looking after the well-being the mental health of students, teachers and parents. That is also a huge thing because, I think overall people's mental health has been affected by what's going on because, as you know, being in Singapore, daily life has changed for everybody. And I know that we'll talk about that more later on, about how this will affect the future, but it's going to have a significant impact on everything that we do, day-to-day life and also education.
Yeah. I think, Iain, what you say is so true, that things have changed so much, so drastically, so suddenly, that all of us are coping with the changes and trying to adapt accordingly. So perhaps it's also good for everyone to understand what are the changes that you faced so far, and what changes do you make in order to adapt to those changes around you?
If you think about the issues from a principal's point of view, one thing, many of my teachers were not in Shanghai. They were around the world. Students, again, were around the world. They couldn't come back to school on the 17th of February as planned. So we had to come up with a plan very, very quickly and adaptable to change. And that's a very difficult thing, especially with the culture here where we are. We had to change to online education. So that meant upskilling all the teachers very, very fast. And at that time, back in the early February, none of the other principals were sure how long this would go on for, how long the online platforms would actually be able to cope with the numbers of children online. So we upskilled all of our staff using 3 different online platforms, just in case they stopped working. So we upskilled them with Zoom, which I had problems with this morning, but we're not going to talk about that. Tencent, which is the Chinese version of Zoom, and CC Talk, which is a bilingual platform for Mandarin and for English. So we've been quite adaptable with that. Also, we are one of the few schools that have actually still ran our timetable online full-time with live lessons, because I know most schools have done pre-recorded. But the reason that we took that decision was to make sure that we were looking after the well-being of the students, because they need to have that interaction with the teachers, but also looking after the well-being of the teachers as well. Because, as you know, having visited my school, we have a large number of foreign teachers here. Mm. Now, that's very different, because for my Chinese teachers, they have family here. It's their home country. For foreign teachers, it's a whole different thing. They live on their own, most of them, which brings a whole different challenge, especially the language challenge as well. So that's the biggest challenges we've faced. We're in a very lucky situation because most of the groups in China, of course, are made up not only of schools, but of kindergartens. And of course, kindergartens will be closed for the foreseeable future. So companies are losing huge amounts of money, which means that staff are having to take reduction. Thankfully for us, we haven't, but I know that others have, or they've actually had to lay off staff, say goodbye. And again, we're in a lucky situation that that hasn't happened to us, but you read in the news every day of companies that have done that. They've had to. They've had to survive. Yeah. So that's been the biggest challenges. And of course, from a personal level as well, coming back here, being in lockdown for so long, not being able to go out shop, trying to do what you can in Chinese when Chinese is not your native language. Of course, that was a huge challenge as well. But thankfully, China's now coming out of that and moving on to the next stage.
Yeah, it's really tough period that we're all going through, and some lucky enough to be getting out of it. So really appreciate and grateful for those who are able to move on. For those who are still in the midst of the whole pandemic, stay strong. From Iain, that things will get plateau off sooner or later, but meantime, stay strong. I think that's the message that we all need to learn from what we hear from Iain. Challenges faced are there all the time. It's real. I think what is important also, maybe Iain, from the challenges that you face, also perhaps share with the people around the community, what lessons did you learn? And also, how do you overcome them?
Lessons that we learned, one of the biggest things that we learned was actually making sure we look after our teachers and our parents. We were spending so much time at the start, of course, focusing on the students, that we forgot about but we didn't spend enough time, looking after the teachers, because it's a very stressful time for all of them. They have family here if they're Chinese, or they're on their own here. So We actually, therefore, spent a lot of time as management, having what we call pastoral or mental health time with the teachers, where they could just talk online to us. With the children, we also added the same thing in. So there was a pastoral well-being session for the kids, where the teachers were just online and the kids could talk about anything, their favorite movie, their favorite book. So this is what happened as change came in as we moved on. That was our biggest thing. The other thing was making sure that we offer them support in terms of the IT and in terms of initiatives, bringing on different things that they could actually do online. So we had a book week online, which was really good fun because you had teachers dressing up as their characters, kids dressing up as their characters from home. So, really good fun activities for a week, but also at the same time, because it was such a positive experience, it raised actually the mental health of the children and of the teachers because they were having fun. So I think that is the biggest change that we've had here. Also, in terms of just offering the teachers, basically they can message you 24 hours a day and you will respond. That's what we've had to do as a management team. Listening to parents, because of course, parents don't understand or don't know online learning. It's a new thing for everybody. So it's educating the parents on why we're doing this, what online education is, what is the difference between online education and offline education. A lot of different things started to move as we started to progress with our online life, if you like.
Yeah, it is true. One of the caption is going around. What is I think the most influential thing or person that helps an organization or a country to go digital? The answer is COVID-19.
Indeed.
Yeah, it really the whole thing.
Well, Shanghai or China was always pretty digital beforehand, with WeChat, the most wonderful invention ever, where I've never been to the bank for the last 2 years. Alipay, so those two apps basically run your life. And to be fair, between here and the UK, that people in the UK are finding it very challenging because at least we could order food on different apps, Ulama, Meituan, or that's the Chinese apps which I can use, or the English apps, Sherpa. But they don't have that really in the UK. They don't have that system set up. Everything in China can be delivered to your home, and that's a big thing. So we just took it to the next step.
Yep.
And put over 1 billion people online at one time,
really
which was incredible.
Adoption, right? Yeah, incredible.
It's incredible because if you think most countries couldn't cope with that, with the infrastructure of actually having so many people online at one time. So it was incredible. And also with the government also offering live lessons on TV at the same time, it was great to actually have the support of the government as well.
That's really good. Yeah, it's amazing just how fast things progress when it's needed. Things happen, which is great. In terms of education industry, what do you think will be the big shift moving forward?
This is going to be, I think what you'll find is that from now on, we're going to actually find that more online learning will take place, more technology will be used in education. Because basically, what you've basically done through the COVID-19 situation is all the teachers around the world have been upskilled to use technology that they never used before. And that's a fantastic thing. People were scared of technology before. People had never heard of Zoom. Now, of course, Zoom is one of the biggest online platforms that's been used for years. Yes. But it was amazing how people I'd spoken to had never heard of it. So it's actually going to be fantastic for different things. So as you know, I work for the IB as well. So at the moment, I'm delivering an online workshop for the role of the PYP coordinator to train up IB PYP coordinators. Yeah. And it's been great because more of an online presence in terms of platforms like Zoom to actually be able to speak face-to-face rather than just on email. So I think what we've seen is, to a degree, the end of the email era, And what's fascinating is it always used to be typing boring things into forums, and now we're actually using Zoom to communicate across different time zones, which is incredible. Now, it will have a positive impact in the education sector, because I know that many schools do not use technology to its full advantage. However, I will always say there needs to be a fine balance between the use of technology in the classroom and not. Because I agree that with this online learning, one of the disadvantages has been the amount of screen time. It's been too much for the kids and for the teachers and for me. You know, we've been online 8 hours, 10 hours every day, which is far too much. So I think once we get into the next academic year and into the future, we'll start to see a lot more studies being done, which the IB has just finished one. And we'll start to see more of a balance within schools and in the classroom and also at home as well.
Really great to see the positive changes in a sense where COVID-19 has forced all of us to move forward, where technology is coming into a lot of our lives, daily lives. At the same time, you're absolutely right, Iain. It's a fine balance between these two, right? You know, technology versus real-time face-to-face connection, face-to-face interaction. Those are, I think, difficult to replace. At the end, we are all human beings, all wanting to be connected physically at the same time. Online is always good in terms of bringing people together, but I think the people touch, the human touch is critical to all of our well-being. So well said. Thank you. What would your own new normal be, Iain? What's the new normal?
That's very interesting, isn't it? Because I think with the quarantine, and I think you've probably experienced this in Singapore as well. Basically, we've all become professional chefs. Yeah, so our cooking skills have become a lot better than before. Before, I spent a lot of the time going out for dinner, but now, I'm spending a lot more time cooking at home, which is great. And I think things have changed in general. I think, seeing people in large groups, that's not going to happen for a long time. So seeing more individuals, going out for dinner with individuals is fine. It's a very small group. So that's not going to change for a very long time. The way I travel now is myself in a car, rather than a group of us that would do before. It's just myself. So I think everyone's very well aware that at the moment, yes, with the coronavirus, wearing a mask has been a common norm. The only reason I'm not wearing one now is because I'm in my own office.
Yes.
That is the only reason. But it's the new norm is wearing a mask as well.
Yeah, so I think all adapting to the new environment that we all live in and keeping ourselves safe and our loved ones and a community around us safe at the same time.
Absolutely.
Nice, Iain. What would your message or messages be for the new generations, our next generations? What would that be if you have a word for them?
I always say, because, with coronavirus, this is one of the viruses that's come about over the last 2 decades. We've had SARS. If you go back, we had the plague, and that's going back hundreds of years.
Yep.
But this happens every generation. There's always something negative that happens to the world, be that a virus. My message to you is, yes, there will always be difficult times in your life. But the big thing is that even though it's a difficult time, you need to be positive. And the way to do that is to be positive in your mind and also speak to your friends. Communication is the key also. Speak to your friends, speak to your family, stay positive, stay well. There's my message.
Oh, thank you, Iain.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode at SkyGems Academy Podcast Series 1 on the topic of how COVID-19 transformed the education industry. We trust that the podcast episode has provided a whole lot of value and insights to everyone who tuned in. If you enjoyed today's episode and you love the vision and mission of SkyGems Academy, can you please help us to convince others to tune in to SkyGems Academy podcast too? Please kindly subscribe to SkyGems Academy podcast. Please also kindly leave a quick review and rate SkyGems Academy podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Anchor.fm, Breaker, and various SkyGems Academy's podcast channels. That would mean the world to us, so thank you so much for your support. Visit our website at www.skygemsacademy.com to find out more about our distinguished speakers and about SkyGems Academy. We appreciate you and your continuous support. Thank you for tuning in to SkyGems Academy podcast. High five and peace out.